2017 Novato Planning Commission meeting. If you'd all rise with me and pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have the first order of business is approval of the final agenda. All right. And rather than go through roll call, can I just get a
all in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries 6-0. In terms of roll call this evening, Commissioner Dawson is absent due to illness. We wish him the best and hope he gets well soon. Next up on the agenda is public comment. So this is the portion of the hearing where if somebody has comments or concerns or something that's on your mind and you want to talk about it that's not on tonight's agenda, now is the time to speak. So I'll give you a moment. If anybody has anything to say that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one to speak, we'll keep on moving. Next up, we have a fairly full consent calendar. We've got minutes from nearly half a dozen hearings that we're going to be catching up on tonight. So the first item is approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of January 12th, 2017.
Move to approve as presented.
Seconded.
And again, rather than doing all roll call, I'm just going to say all in favor, aye. Oh no, can I not do this?
No, so the commission this evening will have to take a vote by the commissioners that were present for those particular items. So for item number 1, that would be Commissioner Havel, Commissioner Derby, Commissioner
Right.
Strauss, and Commissioner Tiernan voting on number 1.
Very well.
And if we could repeat the motion and second on that first one.
I would move the January 12th, 2017 minutes approved as presented.
Okay.
And the second was from who? Was that Commissioner Strauss?
Nope.
I'd seconded. Derby?
Derby second.
So,
okay.
seconded. Okay.
All right. So, Commissioner Derby,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Abstain.
Commissioner Taryn,
Aye.
and
I don't like the minutes.
Commissioner Wernick.
Abstain. I was not
Abstain.
there.
You weren't there. You were absent. And I on my part. So we've got a 3-4. 3 out of the 5 commissioners present that night voted for.
Okay.
1 is absent and 1 abstains. The next item is approval of the Planning Commission meetings of March 6, 2017. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Seconded.
Great.
On that question, there is a slight modification of those minutes that I would suggest. It's on the second page, and I don't know if commissioners have that, brought up, but it was to jog your memory. It was when MCL requested that we put a policy in the general plan to eliminate all non-native plants. And we had a little bit of discussion. They gave us paper that evening, so it was a little sort of jammed. The minutes reflected it would be a very expensive undertaking, and I'd rather see it changed as an overly expansive undertaking. It's very near the end of the meeting, Veronica, almost at the adjournment.
So you'd like that the minutes to reflect that it's overly expansive?
Yeah, an undertaking, yes.
Overly expansive undertaking. Are there any other modifications that commissioners would like to make to these minutes? So do I have a motion to adopt the minutes with the changes recommended by Commissioner Tiernan?
I'll move that motion.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
So we'll start from the Commissioner Tiernan.
Aye.
Commissioner Wernick,
Aye.
Commissioner Derby,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
and I for myself as well. Commissioner Jordan is no longer on the commission, so he will not be voting on it. And then Commissioner Dawson is absent. I hear wildlife cheering in the audience, which is means that motion passes. All right, so then we've got the next item is the approval of the Planning Commission minutes of April 3rd, 2017.
Move to approve as presented.
Okay.
Seconded.
All right. Any comments or modifications from commissioners on April 3rd? Okay. So Commissioner Tiernan,
Aye.
Commissioner Warnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Commissioner Derby,
Aye.
and I for me as well. Commissioners Dawson and again Jordan not present. Next up is the approval of the minutes from April 17th, 2017. Are there any modifications or comments that commissioners would like to make to those minutes?
Move to approve as presented.
Very well.
Second.
Commissioner Tiernan,
Aye.
Commissioner Warnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Derby,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
I wasn't there.
You were absent, okay. And I for my part. And Commissioner Jordan won't be voting on that since he's no longer on the commission. So that carries. And then finally, the approval of the Planning Commission minutes of December 4th, 2017.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Very well. Any final comments or corrections? All right. Commissioner Tiernan,
Aye.
Commissioner Warnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Derby,
Abstain?
Commissioner Strauss,
I was disqualified at the request of the city attorney.
That abstains you.
and Commissioner Gabriel.
Aye.
I believe you were at
Wait,
that
he was
hearing.
absent.
Were you, the December 4th, you were?
No,
that
you
was your
recused
first-
yourself.
I recused,
On
Oh,
that
okay.
item. Yeah.
so I take it back.
It was only 2 weeks ago.
All right, and I for myself.
Not yet.
So that motion carries as well. Okay, so next up, we have our public hearing items. So we have a couple of items on tonight's agenda. We're going to be starting out with the McPhail's Office Commercial Development. It's CEQA Mitigated Negative Declaration, General Plan Amendment, and Precise Development Plan at 5400 Hannah Ranch Road. What we'll be doing is staff will be making a presentation, and then we'll follow up with testimony from the public and discussion amongst the commission. And with that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Havel. Good evening, Commissioners. So yeah, again, this is a request to conduct a public hearing to consider and adopt resolutions recommending the City Council approve a mitigated negative declaration, a general plan land use map amendment from business and professional office to light industrial office, and replace zoning text applicable to allowed land uses in the master plan and corresponding precise development plan for the approved but not yet constructed McPhail's commercial office development, which consists of 3 buildings totaling approximately 62,000 square feet on a 4.9 acre site located at 5400 Hannah Ranch Road. Thompson Development Incorporated has submitted an application to amend the allowed land uses for the McPhail's commercial office condos. As explained by the applicant in their written request, attachment 5 to your report for the land use amendments, the types of uses allowed in the current master plan and precise development plan, which are consistent with the city's business and professional office zoning district, currently don't afford the types of business activities sought after by many companies currently in the market for office space. So to address this, the applicant has identified a select list of uses allowed in the city's business and professional office zoning designation and the light industrial office zoning designation that they believe will better serve and attract a wider range of businesses to to the project. And the applicant's representative, Casey Clement, is here to expand upon that analysis. The land use amendments sought require a general plan land use amendment for the project from business and professional office to light industrial office, an amendment to the McPhail's commercial office development master plan, and amendments to the precise development plan to replace the allowed and conditional uses. Again, currently allowed uses and uses requiring a use permit are consistent with the business and professional office zoning district. The proposed list of permitted uses and uses requiring a use permit is a combination, again, as I explained, of the business and professional office and light industrial office zoning districts. The proposed list of uses are included in your recommended resolutions for the master plan amendments. Additionally, attachment 6 of your report includes a complete definition for each use category proposed, if you're inclined to look at those in more depth. An initial study was prepared for the proposed land use and zoning amendments pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA guidelines. The initial study concluded the project could result in potentially significant impacts in the categories of air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, hydrology, and water quality. The initial study recommends mitigation measures to reduce the significance of the identified impacts to a less than significant level. Given the analysis, findings, and mitigations contained in the initial study, a mitigated negative declaration is recommended to be adopted for the project. Attachment 1 of your report is a resolution recommending CEQA action for the project, and that, again, is for City Council to ultimately adopt a mitigated negative declaration for the project. The project and its associated entitlement actions were reviewed in light of all applicable policies of the current general plan and the necessary findings of approval specified in the Novato Municipal Code for the Master Plan and Precise Development Plan amendments. In all instances, the project was found to meet the applicable policies, design criteria, and findings. In addition, the mitigated negative declaration prepared for the project is considered to meet the requirements of CEQA and includes feasible mitigation measures to avoid potentially significant environmental impacts. So to conclude, staff is recommending, the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council adoption of a mitigated negative declaration and approve a requested general plan land use amendment, the master plan amendment, and precise development plan amendment for the project by adoption of the resolutions attached in your staff report, and that's a total of 4 resolutions. I'd like to point out I handed out an added condition to the precise development plan amendments, and we'll slap it in just before the indemnification provisions, and that is a requirement to simply install a Class 2 bike lane designations in both directions on the leg of Hannah Ranch Road that fronts the project site. So with that, if there's any questions, the staff would be happy to try to answer those.
Great. Thank you very much. So, commissioners, are there any questions? Commissioner Strauss?
Hans, I think you made it clear that it's the developer that picked the categories of the light industrial that they wanted permitted and not, which strikes me as unusual, to have the developer designing the zoning. The zoning. Have we ever done anything like that before?
Well, what I will add to that, I guess my response to that is we did work with the applicant early on in going through the select list of all the allowed uses in the light industrial office zoning designation, as well as those in the business and professional office designation. And quite frankly, it's a list light relative to what do I want to say? I brought the list with me, but
yeah, I went through the list, and I realized that there was a selectivity that went on, and I was bemused by the fact that what was excluded from use out there were kennels, and yet way out there by the freeway, and yet we just approved one 2 weeks ago, right in the middle of the North Redwood corridor, and it just seems irrational to me. It doesn't really make sense, and what we're doing, it strikes me, is approving something or being asked to approve something if we do this, that because some of the uses in the light industrial are permitted, that is, don't require a conditional use permit, it's effectively by right, that we're allowing a project to go in there without knowing what the project is in an area that there's been a lot of work and some controversy in this community about. And I'm just trying to understand the staff's thinking about this.
So are you suggesting that the list be expanded? Is that?
I'm suggesting that if it's going to be zoned light industrial, that it be light industrial. Or maybe we can do light industrial and BPO. Maybe this is going to get flipped again and some other developer is going to do it. If it's appropriate to zone that area light industrial, then we should, it seems to me, we should have it zoned light industrial, rather than just cherry pick and say, well, we can do this and this and this. For example, if they want to build, it strikes me that we may end up with warehouses out there, because warehouses are a permitted use under the LIO, and then it wouldn't, you know, come back to us in that context. I don't know, does the community understand that we are now permitting warehouses in this area where it's been, the use has been somewhat controversial and a lot of work has gone into it? It seems just not quite the way we do things. I'm just not aware of it, and I've been on 2 planning commissions and spent a lot of time. I've never seen this happen.
Staff, before you respond to that, I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Strauss say is that perhaps this is an opportunity for the commission to discuss what uses, I mean, perhaps Commissioner Strauss has some more specific suggestions about what uses should and shouldn't be approved at the site.
No, no. What I'm saying is that the developer is designing our zoning ordinance, and that's just not the way that it seems to me appropriate to do. We have a zoning ordinance that says LIO. I'm assuming we could have a BPO LIO together. Could we?
So I think where we're missing the boat here a little bit is that Novato does have a designer zoning district. It's called PD. That's its purpose, is to alter the uses that are allowed and the regulations that are allowed relative to development standards. So this is a PD piece of property. Every PD district is a designer zoning district, designed by the developer who applies for it.
And we get a specific project, right?
Correct.
When we do it, and
well,
what we don't have here, what we don't have here is a specific project in front of us. That's what's.
Well, you don't have occupiers you don't have tenants, but you never have tenants. You have a list of uses that are allowed in the PD, whatever the PD says the list of uses are, and you have a building and a proposal. Sometimes you have an anchor tenant or a main tenant, depending on the project, but you don't always have every tenant. An office building goes in a PD district, it doesn't have each tenant that's going to be in that office building
I get
signed
it,
up
but
in
the
advance.
use is office building, and here we're being asked to permit a whole bunch of uses in what's effectively a PD zone,
Right.
and without a specific project. Because it could be it could be this, or it could be that, and some of those are permitted uses and don't require conditional use PIP. It seems to me the alternative would be to require, if we can, a conditional use permit for whatever particular use comes along.
So your environmental document is prepared based on the uses that were proposed in the PD, so you'd have to go back to square one and redo the environmental in order to expand those uses.
But those are office buildings, right? Weren't they originally office buildings, office uses?
We're talking about the revised environmental that's in front of you for the revisions that are being proposed. So yes, you could.
If I may, Commissioner Strauss, with the proposed list of uses, we did identify those uses that potentially have offensive activities, and we have applied actually a higher standard with respect to use permit application required for fleet vehicle storage or a restaurant or auto sales, things of that nature that might be less compatible with some of the other uses in the project.
Let me ask, then let me ask, did you not, in doing that and requiring certain to have use permits, follow the LIO zoning?
They're actually, they're permitted within LIO. Some of them a good portion of them are allowed principally, but we're being, I'll call it more conservative in that we would require a subsequent use permit for like auto sales, whereas LIO otherwise wouldn't require it. Does that help answer the
Okay.
question possibly, or?
Okay.
So we've pulled in some of the LIO uses, also recognizing that we'd also like to retain the professional office capacity. So we're taking a more conservative use of what of those LIO uses would be compatible.
Then why not just require a conditional use permit for whatever is going to go in there?
We effectively are on those that we identified. We think that we need to take an extra step to do so. And I could list those if you'd. Page
We
5?
could do that, right? We could require a conditional use permit for all of the, uses that are allowed in the LIO that have been selected.
I'm sorry, I think I understand, but can I rephrase it so I'm sure I understand?
Sure.
So if in fact the uses on the list that are proposed to add to previous BPO uses out of the LIO list, you want to make anything that was on the LIO list, not all uses, but the ones that are enumerated conditionally and not principally permitted?
Yes.
Yes, you can do that.
So that'll be something we'll take up.
Thank you.
So that'll be something we'll take up later on as
Yeah.
a discussion point. Okay. Were there any other questions, commissioners? No, it is.
There we go. All right. So I think I've asked this before on another project, but so anytime there's a PD like we're talking about here with a precise, there's a master plan associated with it. It seems a little redundant to me. So the master plan associated. It seemed like it was just focusing on the FAR, and then the precise plan, of course, has all of the zoning variances or creating your own zoning, if you will, with setbacks, et cetera. Is that correct? Sorry, point over
it's
there.
okay. Commissioner Derby, it's actually the FAR and the allowed uses, the zoning designations are more, as a matter of practice, in the master plan itself. The precise plan is really the design of the project. It includes the actual design. Typically, you'll have a conceptual design at the minimum, but then apply setbacks and height standards through the precise development plan, but not land uses. Those we are actually in this process cleaning this up and putting them all in the master plan.
Sure. So I guess I'm curious why there's, I've asked I think a few times, why is there a master plan overlaid on top rather than just the designation of the LIO?
When you take a piece of land use regulation and you want to apply it in terms of an ordinance, you would do that through a master plan. In this case, our zoning ordinance specifies that a master plan is in fact the zoning, so that is done by ordinance. There is a potential where you could actually streamline the process where the only thing that is adopted is a master plan, where you just fold into the master plan document not only the development intensity, so density or FAR, you would fold in the development standards and have one controlling document adopted by ordinance for a project. And that is certainly an option in our code. It's not one that has been popular. I think often when PD, the planned district zoning was created, we were dealing with larger properties that would go in a phased development pattern where you would establish the master plan and then build precise plans off of it as you went through the different phases
Sure.
of the development. So what we see now are things of the nature of revising a master plan or precise plan that already exist. I think Hans and I will be discussing at some point ways to streamline this process so that we're not showing up with 4 and 5 resolutions for adoption, 400 pages worth of documentation. We'd like to find a more direct route to getting decision-making done. So
Sure. That answers my question. I guess in many cities that we're usually, I'll see a PD, but I won't see a whole master plan associated with it on something this small, at least. Anyhow, there was also something on page 9 that was written, and I just wanted to make sure I understood it. And I think you had a note there, and I think what the note was getting at, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is that if for some reason that this project doesn't work out, that we'd definitely be changing this to LIO or LIO light, as you called it. But that would be approved, but a new project would have to come back with a new precise plan if something different was to be built there. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
that doesn't fall within our LIO sort of light list that we just were talking about.
The bottom line is if this project, its physical concept, isn't carried out, it would warrant the need for a new precise development plan.
Okay. And finally, is there any, there's not a tentative map associated with this. These are not condos.
There is a tentative map. It's
Okay,
just
I
a
missed
parcel
that.
map. There's two buildings on one lot
Okay.
and one building on the other.
Got it.
lot.
Okay. No more questions there.
Great. Any other questions, commissioners?
Oh, I'm sorry. One more. I
Okay.
apologize. How do you get to this site? Driving. If I wanted to go, if my office was there,
I'm
how do
not
I get
sure
there?
I can explain it, but it's effectively accessed on and off in all directions from 37. There are these short, non-standard hook ramps that are out there.
So I guess, okay. So I guess if I'm, I guess it's, that's what I'm
You
curious.
can-
If you
you
lived
can
up
get
north, if you're driving from Petaluma, how would you get there?
You would get off on the 37 exit,
Okay.
and then there's a quick hook ramp.
Oh, there is.
right-
Okay.
Right on the frontage, right as you
Okay.
get down off the
No
bridge.
matter what, you just got to get on the 37. That's how you get there. Okay.
Or you could go out Atherton, get onto 37 there, and then take the Hannah Ranch Road exit.
I'm gonna just try this out right after. If there is a Hannah Ranch development on the other side that's being discussed, will there ever be a connector road?
No.
This will never be able. We will never be able to connect to this.
No, the Hannah Ranch approval in 2011 included a vacation of a floating access easement that was taken out and relinquished
By the city.
by the city council. yes.
Okay, and so they never want to see. They would never. There's no ability to revisit that if one day Hannah Ranch is built out and all of a sudden, maybe we want access to a bunch of office buildings that are right there.
I think from a staff perspective, we can never say never. There may be an opportunity in the future, but assuming that the Hannah Ranch project is developed, it would become more difficult unless the developer of that property saw an opportunity to redevelop at that point in time and put a connection through to 37 or at least Hannah Ranch Road. The other factor is the Caltrans off-ramp system for 37 requires.
Oh.
It's a substandard in terms of how they design facilities these days in terms of curves and so forth. So there would potentially be the need for upgrades there that would be very expensive unless Caltrans has already done those at that point in time, and then it may make sense for the developer to look at that option.
Got it. So it's cost prohibitive probably for any developer to ever consider doing that right now. Okay, thank you.
Can I add to kind of piggyback on that?
Certainly.
But there is an emergency vehicle access road from Hannah Ranch. Is there, I mean, I didn't see that on a map anywhere. Is there some way that we can see where that is proposed to be?
So that particular emergency vehicle access easement actually lies on the Hannah Ranch property. So that would be the property to the north of the McPhail site. And that emergency access easement would connect right at the terminus of Hannah Ranch Road. So where the road ends now, the EVA would connect into it.
So you could get, I mean, there's a fire in a warehouse and you got to get, and because that's going to definitely be the most easily accessible route to get there. Everything would burn down very quickly if you tried to go 37. I mean,
Yeah, so it would be bollarded, but it would be not unlike many EVAs we design into projects. So yeah,
okay.
Commissioner Derby has
Yes,
one
sir.
more question.
One more question, just to make this a long one. I noticed in the modification something about bicycle lanes. If I was on a bike, how would I get to the? Do I get on the 37 on a bike?
Can I take a shot at that? So we thank you for the question. And Commissioner Turner made a phone call earlier today about bicycle connectivity, and so we also again touch base with SMART staff today to reconfirm the disposition of the development of the McPhail site and the Hannah Ranch project. There's adequate capacity and right-of-way within the SMART right-of-way, and they intend to construct the leg of the Class 1 bike and pedestrian path along the, I'll call it the frontage or the side, the adjacent to the McPhail's project, and then it would run through either on track or deviate through the Hannah Ranch project with that entitlement. And so that alignment's going to be nailed down with the recent amendments that they're pursuing for that entitlement. So there is the long-term plan is to have that Class 1 bike connectivity And we're following that closely with SMART. So.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, great. If there's no more questions, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Any other questions? Commissioner Tiernan?
Yeah, before we do that, I have visited the site, and I wanted to say that I had met with the applicant on Friday.
Oh, great.
And I will let you know that I did too, along with Mr.
Okay,
Commissioner Tiernan.
As did I.
all right. So all three of you visited the site, and all three of you have met with the applicant?
I did not visit the site.
Or you
but
did not
I
visit
did
the
meet
site,
with
but
the
you met
applicant.
with the applicant, okay.
I couldn't figure out how to get there, but I didn't even.
I wasn't going alone.
And Commissioners Strauss and Gabriel, did you?
Didn't meet with them. I've been on that site
Okay.
before.
And Commissioner Gabriel?
I went around a few times and finally found the site, but my tentative concern still is one that I addressed with Mr. Grunt, and that is the site itself, all the studies from 2008, percolation, all the different things are probably pretty much in place, but what's definitely changed since 2008 is traffic. And so I have a tentative concern about the age of that traffic report, and also that it's the uses of the property. Obviously, if it's more passively used, it's not going to have that much of an impact. But if you did put something that would drive traffic to it, I mean, the historical report says 677 daily trips. You know, traffic is certainly the bane of our existence, so I'm a little concerned about what effect this is going to have on traffic, especially going into 37, which is already packed up.
Okay, I think I'd like to hold that comment till it comes back to the commission after testimony for further discussion, if we may, because that's
Okay.
more of a concern versus a question. If that's all right with my fellow commissioners, or
Yeah, that's
okay.
good.
And I'll mention also that yes, I've visited the site, and the project applicant did very politely reach out, but I declined to meet with them. All right, so with that, we're going to open up the public hearing. The applicant will go first. They have 20 minutes, if they need all 20 minutes. And then if members of the public would like to speak, typically that's a 3-minute run for members of the public to voice their issues and concerns. So with that, I'll open up the public hearing, starting with the project applicant.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Hans, for all of your hard work on the staff report and for giving us a presentation. And thank you, commissioners, for hearing our proposals tonight.
I don't think that's on.
Hello? Hello? Test. Hello?
Steve, why don't you give her the one you got there? Give her yours. Give her your chair.
As luck with having a computer cable won't reach either, so.
Okay, there's kind of a lot of clicking, but, okay.
I think we have our technical expert here to work on the microphone. Perhaps he knows the right button to hit. He's probably going to take it outside and kick it a couple of times.
Testing.
All right. Do we have ignition?
Close to it.
Get really close to it, okay. Can you hear me? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll introduce myself quickly. My name's Casey Clement, and I represent the owners of 5400 Hannah Ranch Road. The site's typically been called McPhail's site for a very long time, and we'll be rebranding it as Gateway Novato. I thought I'd get started tonight and lay the groundwork for our proposal by talking a little bit about the office market in Novato, or starting in Marin, actually. So this first table, published in 2017, shows that the availability rate in Marin County has been hovering at about 20% for the last year or so, which is historically quite high for the region. And this next chart, if you direct your attention to the purple line, you'll see the history of the availability rate and see that it dipped a bit in at the end of 2015 to about 15% and has been raising since then. This table breaks down the data into submarkets, and as you can see, the availability rate in Novato is at about 37.5% right now, which is about double the county average, and by all accounts is really very high. It's really easy to explain the discrepancy. In the end of 2015, the availability rate in Novato was already high at about 22.5%, and then with Fireman's Fund leaving in the beginning of 2016, it nearly doubled the vacancy rate. The data tells a very different story about the industrial market, however. This first chart reveals that the overall vacancy rate for industrial office space in the North Bay has been steadily falling since 2011, from about 11% to now it's currently at 4%. The second table reveals that the vacancy rates of all submarkets in Marin County are even lower than the region as a whole, with Novato clocking in at about 3.9%. So in summary, the data is very clear. There's an overabundance of vacant office space in Novato and a real dire need for industrial space. So now turning to the project, it sounds like you guys are all very familiar with the location here. This is a great aerial that we took in 2003. We're at the northeast corner of Highway 37 and US 101. And if you can see that there, I've outlined the site in red. The yellow arrow showing the 101 north. And there's the Highway 37 west as well. So the project was originally approved in 2008, as Hans was saying. 60,000 square feet of business professional office over 3 buildings. There's a rendering on the left of building A, and then on which is in the northeast portion of the site. So if you look at the site plan to the right, it's the building in the upper right-hand corner. We've drawn up construction documents and have applied for a building permit. We have approval from the building department, the fire department, and we're working with the other agencies and hope to pull building permits in spring of 2018 and get our shovels in the ground. So the proposal that we're asking you to consider tonight is not to change the actual form of the already approved project, but instead to expand the function to make it a more flexible project that can respond to the market in a much better way. So I've listed here on this slide, these are the 12 uses that we've proposed as a part of the master plan. And very early on in the process, when we came to staff and asked for a general plan amendment, of course, from our perspective, we would have liked as many uses to be allowed as possible. But it was staff's opinion that we really needed to pare that list back to exclude the most high impact uses. So on the right, I've listed the uses that are typically allowed in light industrial office designation in Novato that would not be allowed in this project. So things like, and I apologize, the fonts are so small, but things like quarry materials storage, laundries and dry cleaning plants, indoor storage facilities. When we were talking to staff very early on, they felt that these would not be appropriate for the site, and so so that's why we have the list of uses that we do. So Building A is the planned future home of our parent company, Thompson Builders. And it consists of about 13,000 square feet of two-story office space, and if we're approved this evening, 8,000 square feet of double height warehouse space to support our construction operations. The goal is that the end product will be a very attractive office building that's also has a lot of utility as well. And so just to wrap up here, I thought that I'd make an example of a development that's already built in San Rafael. It was built in 2006. It's called The Vineyard. And if you're heading north on 101 through Terra Linda and you look off to the right, you'll see it just there, right off the freeway, just east of the freeway. It's comprised of 38, it's a light industrial office complex comprised of 38 commercial condominiums. And it has a diverse list of tenants such as orthodontists, insurance agents, general contractors, subcontractors, wine distributors, and law offices, among others. It's really a very attractive project. With an expanded list of allowable uses, the Vineyards has been able to draw upon a wide base of potential tenants with diverse needs. It's been very successful, demonstrating the demand for this type of project in the region. With Gateway Novato, we aspire to build an equally attractive and highly functional development right here in Novato. So that's my spiel. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Before you step down, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do.
Commissioner Strauss?
The vineyard, which is looks like a very attractive kind of place. Do you know whether that was approved as a single project, as either part of a PD or conditional use permit, or whether they did the kind of thing that you're asking us to do here, which is to basically change the zoning without knowing what the project is?
I believe it's a PD as well, and they have a list of allowable uses. They didn't have a chance to pre-approve all the tenants, but I think that that's not typically done necessarily. But I can't say with 100% certainty because I wasn't involved in the approvals.
While you were speaking, you mentioned warehousing, and that's actually my primary concern about it, is that we're going to end up with what you're now calling Gateway Novato is going to be a warehouse project. And is that in the works? I mean, what is contemplated? What do you folks think is going to happen there?
Well, the concept is to have users just like us. So we do have one building that will be owner occupied, where we'll have our offices in 13,000 square feet, a nice offices where we have bankers come meet us and lawyers, and it'll be very business professional office. And then we'll have a component where that can also support our construction services. So it's kind of a mix of both professional and also support for the construction. And so other uses like that, similar to that.
But the owner will be using it for those?
For Building A, yeah.
Just for Building A. Okay.
Great. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Wernick?
Button on here. And Building A will be built initially, that's the plan, and it would be later that you would do the other two buildings.
Yeah, that's correct. It's nearly impossible to get financing to build brand new office space in Novato right now with vacancy rates the way that they are. So, yeah, this might change things if we can change the use, but really to get Building A built, that was the way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to open it up to the rest of the audience now. Would anybody like to, I don't have any speaker cards on this item from audience, but if anybody would like to speak on this matter, please feel free to stand up and approach the podium. Seeing none.
Guess they're all here for the next item.
I will close the public hearing for this item. Going once, going twice. All right, public hearing is closed for this item. So I'll bring it back to the commission for further Questions, conversation, discussion?
Yeah, so,
Commissioner
Hans,
Tiernan?
even with Building A, you know, being, I guess, through the building or it still has design review. What further processes would this go through, assuming that?
The design of the project is fully entitled, so they're in the building permit stage. So they've been through final design review.
Oh, they have, okay.
They have.
And the second build, the,
As well as buildings two, the other two
Okay.
buildings, correct.
okay, thank you.
Can I follow up on that and to make sure I understand it, so that the buildings themselves aren't changing?
Correct. Site and buildings are not proposed to be changed.
It's only the uses
Mix of
within those
uses.
buildings?
To
Okay.
incentivize new businesses.
Commissioner Wernick? Oops, I'm sorry. Commissioner Turner, were you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Wernick, did you have anything you wanted?
Yeah, just one question, just kind of a clarification question. There's fleet vehicle parking, I mean, was mentioned as, I guess we had to add a definition of it, but it was mentioned so, I mean, repeatedly in the report. Is there some interest in, I mean, we talk about, we're looking at just uses, but is that a use that is likely to happen out there? Is that why that's included?
I don't know that it is likely to happen, but certainly we wanted to, we required a use permit. We're suggesting that we're recommending a use permit be required if it's proposed. The definition doesn't allow construction equipment being stored on site. The idea is to keep this site attractive and more high-end, not construction storage and things of that nature. So when we talk about fleet vehicles, we're talking about maybe a plumbing company or something of that nature, a shuttle service, but that we would certainly have an opportunity to look at how those vehicles are parked in terms of the overall, I'll call it the aesthetic as well as the functionality of the site, things of that nature. So that's why that definition was sort of a custom tailored definition to again further defend the site. The quality of the site was our intention.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Commissioner Tiernan? Yeah.
Would you say this is akin to Belmarin Keys?
You know, yes, I didn't say that as part of my presentation, but in terms of anecdotally, the kind of calls that we receive, the interest in space like that out at Belmarin Keys, which is, as Casey pointed out, the vacancies are very low. Arguably, this project with the change up in land uses would complement those demands.
Commissioner Derby, I know you've got more questions.
No, actually, I don't.
No? Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I actually did have a couple of questions for staff. So the project was approved in 2008, and building permits are applied for. It sounds like they're just about ready for issuance. So the project technically hasn't been vested yet. I mean, when I went to the site, there's a lot of earthwork that's happened there. Have grading permits been issued, or?
So there's a surcharge grading permit to settle the site for construction purposes. And it's a good question. Your question is quite observant that they're in the process of their final map and improvement drawings for the project. So we would not, without those improvement drawings being approved, we would not be able to finally issue the building permit. But the applicant appears to be anxious to get the ball rolling and everything in place to be shovel ready, as Casey put it. And so Public Works is currently reviewing the improvement drawings for the final map as well.
So then that brings me to my next question. If the project was approved in 2008, what are we looking at in terms of, I'm curious about, an entitlement when it's granted is good for so long. Within that time period, it needs to be vested, meaning some kind of construction needs it. So when is the expiration date of this, and is there an extension possibility, and how does this project kind of impact those timelines, if at all?
So that through the state extensions, which were mandated for all municipalities statewide, the project entitlements, including the tentative map, were good through November of this year, and the city has granted a one-year extension. To that, we have the capacity for 2 one-year extensions through our municipal code. And so November, and I forget the exact date, but November of next year would be the sunset on the tentative map for the project. But as we're currently looking at improvement drawings, we're hopeful that they can bring those to fruition and acceptance through Public Works.
Okay, so we've got until November of 2018.
Correct.
To get this thing on the road.
Correct.
And then my understanding is once they pull permits and begin construction, then essentially the project's considered vested at that point. So then it's just a matter of finishing the work.
Correct. If they're at that point, if they have fully accepted improvement drawings and they're pulling permits on that, I don't understand why the city would be in a position to want to let the tentative map sunset. We'd probably have a hard time doing that.
I mean, I think they would have at that point, they have legal rights to finish construction based on the permits that they pulled. Good faith reliance. Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Strauss, do you have any further questions? Or
Are you gonna
shall
ask
we?
the question?
Commissioner Gabriel, did you
Well,
want to?
I'm concerned about, I'd like to hear from staff on the issue that Commissioner Gabriel raised about the age of the traffic study.
Well, I'm going to take a crack at it, and then Darcy Rosenblatt with Dudek, our environmental consultant, is here too to correct me if my 30,000-foot answer is that the 2008 study recognized that with a all-office project, traffic impacts there were no significant traffic impacts, and the proposal with the distribution and warehousing components is only likely to actually diminish the number of head counts, employee counts, and trip ends to the project site, if you will, generated in a AM/PM peak condition for the change up in the mix of uses. And so there wasn't a recognized need to initiate a new traffic study for the project site. I'd also add that really, as it's been pointed out here tonight, that the limited surface streets largely only serve this project site, and from there the connectivity is all through the 37 and 101 interchanges, which this project would not warrant some larger mitigation from Caltrans, if that were the case. I don't know if that answers your question or provides some security.
Commissioner Gabriel, would you like to?
No,
Any other questions?
this is the third time I've heard the answer to it, so I'll stipulate that you've answered my question.
Okay, great, thank you. So at this point, I'd like to hear my fellow commissioners' thoughts on the project, I suppose. Comments regarding the merits. Why don't I start with Commissioner Gabriel this time? Would you like to start off, or actually, would anybody like to start with comments regarding the project? Just general thoughts, observations, merits, comments? Commissioner Tiernan, do you want to? Okay.
I think that what they're requesting is something that I'm going to support. The idea of expanding the uses out there and making it akin to the Belmer and Keith kind of mix of businesses. I understand, I hear what Jay's saying, that we just don't want a big warehouse, but I don't see that necessarily as being the case. So the site is sort of at the end of Hannah. I don't think it is exactly the most prominent site in town, and for us to get something going there, I mean, it was an old concrete batch plant and was kind of looking hideous for a while, and is, I think, making progress in the right direction. So I'm comfortable with this. And Jay, I think that there are actually some use permits that are permitted for a couple of those uses.
Yes, yeah, there are.
So it's not just, and I think the idea that the light industrial zoning is being reduced in half, that the tattoo parlors and some of the other things that otherwise would be in light industrial are not part of this, should give some peace of mind that is not going to be vile out there. So I'm comfortable supporting the project and what's before us.
Commissioner Wernick?
And I would echo Commissioner Tiernan's comments. I like the fact that there's a tailored list of uses because it actually provides a little more security in terms of what could potentially be out there. I've lived in town for 36 years, and the site's been unattractive the entire time. So I'm encouraged that something will actually happen out there. And it's nice that Thompson Builders wants to have their business out there as well. In terms of traffic, these businesses don't generate a lot of traffic. And I don't know what else you'd put on the site. I mean, having been originally looked at for commercial office, I mean, or business professional office, that would have generated a lot more traffic, and it's a tricky site getting in and out of. We will have, hopefully more and more people taking the SMART train, not that there's exact access to it there, but with a bike path, you could have people in smaller businesses biking out there, getting to work that way. I think it's a little bit more conducive to that because of where it is. It's actually probably easier getting there on a bike than it is on in a car. So I am generally favorable to this.
Thank you. Commissioner Derby, you want to go?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Well, big thank you to staff. I think working with the applicant to kind of develop what I would call maybe a flex space sort of designation, I think that's on point with something we want to see there. And I think you were clearly thinking about some of the things that Mr. Strauss brought up, that we don't want to see a bunch of warehouses there, and you did everything you could to try to reduce that. Economies change. We can't have some big giant office building there. It's also an obscure site. So, also a big thank you to the applicant for wanting to invest money in Novato and bring more businesses here.
Thank you. Commissioner Strauss.
Yeah, I guess I'm prepared to go along. I think the important thing for me is that the buildings are, the design, the layout of the buildings are set. And those have already been approved. They've been entirely through our process. And those uses, I think, which might tend to change the way the project looks and acts, would require use permits. So I don't mind the chopped up warehouse look as it is in Belmarin Keys. I think that's beneficial. I like the flexibility. So I'll go along with it myself.
And Commissioner Gabriel, would you like to add anything?
Now that my concern about traffic has been mitigated,
Okay.
I like the project because it's scaled in. It's not that humongous a project, and also it's going to be anchored, if you will, to use the retail term, by an owner-user. And the other buildings can be scaled in for similar or dissimilar businesses. So I'm favorable.
Okay. Great, thank you. My fellow commissioners, I would concur with everything you've said, and I really don't have anything to add to that. So at this point, if there's any other modifications or discussion, I think a motion might be appropriate at this point.
Well, there's 4 resolutions, so I'll move the first one to approve the mitigated negative declaration.
Second? Oops. I'll second.
Okay, so Commissioner Tiernan.
Aye.
Commissioner Wernick.
Aye.
Commissioner Derby.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel.
Aye.
And I as well. So that's 6-0 for the CEQA component. And we have the general plan amendment next.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, Commissioner Tiernan.
Aye.
Commissioner Wernick.
Aye.
Commissioner Derby.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel.
Aye.
I as well. So that carries 6-0 as well. Then we have the master plan amendment.
Move to approve as presented.
Seconded.
All right, Commissioner Tiernan.
Aye.
Commissioner Wernick.
Aye.
Commissioner Derby.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel.
Aye.
And I as well. And finally, the precise development plan.
And I would move with the change that Hans handed out earlier. Everyone received at the discretion of Public Works Director, applicant stripes, signs the bicycle path. So with that amendment as well added, I would motion that the PDP, the precise development plan.
Second.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Tiernan.
Aye.
Commissioner Wernick.
Aye.
Commissioner Derby.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel.
Aye.
And I as well. So that carries 6-0 as well. I think that concludes it for tonight's item number 6, the McPhail's office project. Great. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is, actually before we dive into this item, commissioners, should we take a quick recess? Is anybody, or should we plow along?
Keep going.
I
All
think
these
we should
people
keep rolling.
waiting.
Keep going?
Live
All right.
crowd.
They can't all go
All
to
right.
the bathroom.
Very well. Here we go. So the next item on the agenda is the Montessori preschool use permit out at 600 Palm Drive.
Oh,
And
paper.
We'll, thank you.
We had an additional email that
Oh,
came in.
okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, well. Staff just passed out an email received on December 18th, that's today, at 4:51 p.m. from Joan Good. So I'd like to acknowledge that we have received that, and myself and my fellow commissioners are currently reading this email, and we'll continue to digest it throughout the hearing. But in the interest of moving things along, I'd like to turn this item over to staff now for their presentation regarding this item.
Thank you. Good evening, commission members, Chair, Michelle Johnson, Planner 2. The second project on tonight's agenda is a request from Unity and Marin for approval of a use permit to allow a Montessori preschool to operate at the existing Unity and Marin location at 600 Palm Drive. Staff is requesting the Planning Commission consider and adopt a resolution granting the use permit based upon the required findings in the staff report and conditions of approval in the resolution. So the proposed project is at the existing location at 600 Palm Drive, Unity and Marin. It is currently used as a church facility. The proposed project is going to utilize the existing sanctuary, some classrooms, the playground, and the parking lot for a maximum of 52 children during the week, Monday through Friday, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. with occasional holidays and staff development closures. There'll be 3 scheduled sessions, morning, school day, and full-time. The reason for that is to give a variety of options to families to use the facilities. In addition, it will help to reduce the traffic congestion. The south parking lot is proposed to be dedicated as the valet or supervised child drop-off in the AM, and there'll be no parking allowed in that parking lot. The north parking lot will be dedicated to parking and child walk-in, and based upon conversations with the applicant, in order to drop your child off at the preschool, you actually have to check in with the teacher, make eye contact so that they can do an analysis on the child to make sure that they're not sick. So there won't be a safety issue with the children walking from the parking lot into the sanctuary, which is where they do their morning or afternoon meets. Based upon the uses, the required parking for the church is 21 parking spaces, and that's with the maximum amount of employees that are expected. Not initially. Initially, they're proposing 4 employees, but as they grow to a maximum of 52 students, they're proposing to have a total of 10 employees. The applicant has also gone ahead and staggered outdoor playtime so that there'll be no more than 30 children playing at one time. And they'll have 4 different time slots to go ahead and minimize the noise. And the applicant has also provided an extensive operations manual, which has been provided with attachment number 1. So this particular project was originally set to be heard by the zoning administrator. And after noticing, we received emails and phone calls with concerns regarding the location, the play structure, which I'd like to bring. This proposed project is not looking at the use of the play structure. The play structure is actually not part of this project. The play structure, it was unfortunate timing in the fact that the play structure went up with the church, but it's actually a use of the church. It's not, the applicant is going to, the church is giving them the opportunity to use the playground, but it's not they're not required as part of their state licensing to provide a play structure. They are required to provide a play area, but the play structure is not required, and that's not part of this review for this evening. So based upon concerns with the Hamilton area, the zoning administrator has referred this project to the Planning Commission for approval. The project is exempt based upon California Environmental Quality Act 15061B3, based on the general rule that there's no without question that based upon the existing use and the proposed use being at different times, that it's not without question it's not going to impose a significant impact on the environment. So the applicant has also hosted several neighborhood meetings. Prior to the staff attended neighborhood meeting, they had invited people to the Unity in Marin. And they also went door to door within the 600. They had actually contacted staff ahead of time to get the addresses of the neighborhood so that they could go ahead and talk and kind of do a meet and greet to let them know what the proposed project was, of which the applicant had said that they didn't have anyone attend. We did, when we did the staff, when the city of Novato actually sent out a notice, we had approximately 15 people attend, of which approximately 3 people spoke, and they weren't necessarily opposed to the project, they just had questions. The questions were concerning how the children were going to be separated. One of the questions was regarding the play structure, and then there were some questions regarding parking. Based upon staff analysis, the proposed project is consistent with the general plan. It highlights the City of Novato general plan policies, land use, traffic, and human services. It's also consistent with the Novato Municipal Code, the child care facilities, parking, and noise. And it's also consistent with the 4 required use permit findings. Based upon that, staff is recommending approval of the project based upon the findings in the staff report and the conditions of approval in the resolution. And we have the applicant here if you have additional questions.
Thank you. So commissioners, does anybody have questions for staff? Commissioner Tiernan?
I do. Ms. Johnson, so I hear mostly child care being, the how we're characterizing the project, but it's broader than just child care, isn't it?
No, they're from ages from 2 to 7.
So 7's the cutoff.
And it's entering 1st grade.
Okay, so it's preschool.
So it's 7 or entering 1st grade.
Okay, and then I can't imagine a lot of 7-year-olds, being on their own, but there were issues raised in some of the communications received around people crossing the streets. Is it 100% that people will be picking up and dropping off those children, that they would not be, pedestrians?
Yes, so based upon the parent handbook, of which it's handed to every parent, and that they have it's essentially a contract. There are the different parking spaces that are, there's the parking and then there's the valet, and so those are the areas that they're allowed to park. There's plenty of parking there, and based upon the fact that no child is allowed to be dropped off at the preschool or leave without having made eye contact with the parent or the supervisor, whomever is responsible for them. They need to actually make eye contact, sign a piece of paper before they leave. So they will not be leaving without some kind of an adult.
Okay. And I just, to the applicant, if you could just provide those assurances to your neighbors that there aren't going to be kids wandering in the streets. I hear loud and clear what you just said, but I think that the applicant needs to say that as well. That's the extent of my question. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Wernick?
Yeah, so I have a great deal of confusion over this because in my mind, preschool and child care are not, daycare centers are not the same thing. So I'm confused because preschool is defined as preschool, so prior to kindergarten. This program looks like it's a daycare facility that provides some preschool. Children at 5 or 6 are eligible for kindergarten, and by state law, they're supposed to be in kindergarten. I don't know any child that isn't in kindergarten or delays kindergarten to 7 unless they have disabilities, and that child would not be accepted at a facility like this. So I'm just generally confused over what the purpose is. You know, my own experiences here in town, we have St. Francis Preschool. That is a preschool. They take 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old children, and that is what they do. They have a morning session, they have an afternoon session, or like pretty much a morning session, and a few days a week they have an afternoon session. So it's just that for me, the impact is different if it's a daycare. It's more because, you know, a 7-year-old is very different from a 3-year-old. You don't put a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old in the same playground. They don't play in the same play structures. I know, I'm a mom. We went to preschool. So I'm just having a little bit of confusion over that, over what the purpose of the facility truly is. And, you know, I know we have places in town like Miss Sandy's, and that is a daycare that provides a preschool. But to my knowledge, it's not up to 7. And it's more of I mean, it is a daycare. It's for working parents, and they get that preschool component included. So can you add anything to or help clarify this so I can understand this better?
Sure. So I can address where the preschool came from, because we actually, as staff, discussed this as to what the best definition for the project was. But in regards to the details and of the different, it was my understanding, based upon conversations with staff or with the applicant, and I would like the applicant to be able to answer in more detail as to how they separate each of the classes. Not all the children, from what I understand, are going to be together at one time. They're going to be separated into groups. Based upon why we identified them as a preschool was based upon the zoning code. So the zoning code goes, and is actually, they all fall under childcare facilities. And under the definition of childcare facilities, you have these subsections, and preschool falls under subsection, and that was where this particular project fit into that subsection, and that's how it got identified, because we looking at it as a private school, as a daycare, and as a preschool, and based upon the child care facility, it all fell into the same category. But in regards to how the children will be broken up, I would like to go ahead and defer to the applicant, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, and we can wait till
Okay.
after this.
Yeah,
The chair
let's do that.
determine that.
Well, yeah. Good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Derby, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
No? Commissioner Strauss? No? Commissioner Gabriel? No? Okay, I did have a question. Are there any active code violations on this property?
No, there are not. The only thing that was most recent was the play structure, but they have an approved building permit for that play structure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Turner?
Is there anything else? I think I read in one of the communications something about landscaping or something further was going to go on around that play structure?
The applicant has proposed around the fence line to put plants, to add some density to but to reduce the noise for the neighbors. But based upon the location of the play area, it's a minimum of 375 feet from the nearest residence.
Great. Okay, with that, I would like to open up the public hearing, and we'll start with the project applicant. And they have 20 minutes to give a presentation. 20 minutes, believe it or not. And then speakers, members of the public have 3 minutes, but we'll start with the applicant.
I thank you, commissioners, for shooting through your 10 minutes and just starting with us, and thank you, Michelle, for all the work that you're doing on this project.
Cindy, I'm not sure we can hear you. Just hold it close to your mouth.
How's that? We may have to, it looks like it's on. So while we're working for it, shall I just speak louder? Okay, so I think it might be helpful for me to tell you a little bit about my background, because I think it's relevant to the project. I hold a bachelor's degree in human development. I hold a master's degree in cultural and community studies and spirituality. I hold a second master's degree in educational leadership, and I hold a doctorate in educational leadership with an emphasis in equity from UC Berkeley. I served 2 terms as California's. Just go like that?
Well, no, just closer to as close as.
How's that?
A little bit closer.
That I can't get any closer.
That's what we're gonna work with. Okay.
I served 2 terms as president of one of California's preschool associations, and in that role, I assisted in writing a lot of the regulations that govern schools in the state of California. I also served as vice president of the National Child Care Association, and in that role, I oversaw all of the schools that were licensed in the nation and assisted with such things as subsidized child care and looking at quality education, writing a portion of the Americans with Disabilities Act that governs schools, and community partnerships with schools and preschools and with neighborhoods and communities. And so I think that some of my background connects very closely with the core values of Unity and Marin in attempting to connect with the community and in looking at issues that really assist a need. So first I want to address your question, and I should mention that in addition to that, I am also dual Montessori trained, and so in my doctorate, I received my doctorate with other public school superintendents, but I also was Montessori trained internationally and the American Montessori version. So typical preschools often stop at kindergarten. Montessori education is a multi-aged pedagogy, and so it incorporates kindergarten. And so it is typical for Montessori teachers to be trained 2 through 7 or 3 through 7. And all of that is considered preschool before one enters into what is often termed in public school as being primary. And so most any Montessori school you will find incorporates the kindergarten year. Children can leave a Montessori school and go right into first grade. The age is 2-7, and I think 7 feels like this older kid kind of thing, but it's 2-7 because some parents begin their children at the TK level and they're 4 point something and they start kindergarten. Some children now, because that has started to change in public school, children are 5. Some parents have the ability to, and they are not required to, have their children begin in public school kindergarten at 5 or 6. They can wait until first grade. And so there are some parents, some children with special needs, some children who they just tended to be needing more social development, who might go through their kindergarten year in preschool or in a Montessori environment and then either continue with kindergarten in public school or go from there into first grade. There was also a question that had to do with the delineation of preschool versus daycare, and it's an oddity because when I served as president of California's Preschool Association, there was this line of demarcation between the people who wanted to be considered preschool and the people who wanted to be considered daycare providers. And the state of California actually doesn't care about the delineation. So the license under which preschools and daycares receive their licensure all falls under daycare, childcare, and the state could care less who calls it what. And then different centers or facilities or preschools define exactly who they are. A Montessori curriculum is probably one of the most rigorous curriculums that one could find. Language arts, mathematics, cultural studies, all of the sciences, all of the arts, sensorial development and practical living skills. And so I wouldn't say that it lives in the land of daycare versus preschool. I would say it lives in the land of preschool, but has eyes open to the fact that parents have a need. And one of the things that I discovered as president of one of California's preschool associations is that there's a need that's out there. When I first started my very first school, the majority of the parents didn't work. There was one parent in the family that didn't work. That's just not the case anymore. And the need is great, and there isn't enough to fill the demand that is present out there. And so consequently, I am often speaking to people in churches and other buildings that I know have the ability to be licensed to satisfy a need so that parents don't go out and get unlicensed childcare. In my role as vice president of the National Child Care Association, for us, that was the scariest thing. Because little things that people don't pay attention to, like the fact that if you have push pins around tiny children, that one swallow, it's fatal. 100% of the time. And when you don't have children who are under rules and regulations that guide them, guide the people who are take care of them, then you end up with possibilities of really disastrous things happening. And so licensed childcare is really critical. And so I was brought in to look at a need, and I saw it and I shared it, that there was a need in the city of Novato, that it wasn't being served, that there were parents who were on wait lists, that their children would be adults and 21 having children before they were able to even get in to preschool. And that somewhere in there, if you don't fill it legally, people will look for other means because they need it. And so we started to look at what was the potential for the space that was at Unity, and it was empty. I mean, I looked at it, and the majority of the time there was nothing going on, and that is pretty typical for a lot of churches, that nothing is happening during the day, that it taxes the budget because there's nothing going on. And on the other side, there are schools in desperate need of space who cannot find space that will meet all of the state requirements and all of the city requirements and all of the county requirements in order to be able to have children in legally. And it's such a wonderful marriage when you think about it. And so, so the information was shared, and what we didn't anticipate was that a little bitty climbing structure would have made it or broke it. But when you look at the fact that there is a need there, that preschool is essential to the success of children, that's been validated by studies. When you juxtapose the important need for a neighborhood to maintain a high-quality, peaceful community and the concept of placing a preschool with parents arriving and children running around and being joyful, it sounds like it doesn't go together, but actually it would probably be one of the greatest legacies that Hamilton could ever have. Montessori is called education for peace. And to turn out children who are change makers, who are peaceful individuals, the tenet of Montessori is that you care for self, others, and the environment. And to turn out a group of children who are going to look at their neighborhood and wouldn't walk over a piece of paper on the ground, who would pay attention to what kind of sound they're making because they're made aware of the fact that people might be sleeping or that they might be working, who would take care of being able to serve their community. That's the signature of a Montessori environment, and I can't see that doing anything else but making Hamilton successful. So we looked at every little thing that we could possibly come up with that would in any way impact the neighbors, and we were dying to share it with them, except they weren't there when we had the meeting. But we designed a way for the parking to be, to mitigate problems on the street, and it's something that I've done before in Los Gatos for Sisters of the Holy Names. They used to have a preschool in Los Gatos called Casa Maria, and they did a valet parking thing, which worked very, very nicely. There's a school in Alameda that also has a valet parking that works very nicely, pulls all of the cars out. And 52 sounds like a whole lot of children when you look at it. The state came out and said, you have enough indoor-outdoor square footage to license for 200. This is really crazy. Why are you licensing for a smaller amount? And we initially requested licensure for 98, and we discussed that with the planners and came to 52, but 52 children never come at the same time. 52 children could never get dressed at the same time. And parents come in at differing times. At the school in Alameda, there are 98 children who come at the same time on one day, 96 who come at the same time on one same day, but they all come at different times during the day. And so it's staggered. There are the children who park and their parents bring them in. There are the children who have valet and they drive around. Parents love it when it's raining. But the state of California requires an adult to accompany a child. There's no way a child could walk in unattended. It's a type A violation in the state of California. And so children have to come with a parent. They have to walk with a parent. A teacher has to see them. They have to see the child. They have to see that the child is healthy, and the parent has to sign them in, or the adult who's bringing them has to sign them in. So the idea of children doing what you can do in elementary school or middle school or high school couldn't ever happen in preschool. It would be against the law. And so we looked at how that would be. Michelle, can we show the... video. We looked at how it could be and had someone create a simulation of what it would look like for cars to utilize the valet system on the south parking lot, and for parents to walk in on the north parking lot, and it's safe. Where we designed the parents who were walking in would park, and the way that they would have to walk, it's completely safe. And the way that we designed the cars coming in, we also felt was pretty safe. And so if this comes up, you'll get a sense of that. Sarah, I see south lot traffic twice. So let's assume it's the 413 one. If there's only, I only put one. So there's Unity and Marin, and what we have is a car coming in to the left side, coming around, and right there where it's paused, there's a teacher who's on that side allowing that child to come out, having the parent sign in, and then they exit. There's another car. So if you can imagine how many cars can fit in that space, you pull the cars immediately off the street, and where the cars are in the parking lot. And the way that you see the cars coming is pretty much how that shows up in school. You have a couple of cars who come at a time, and maybe for 10 minutes you might have 4, something like that, because you have parents who are coming from 7 o'clock on, from the time that the school's open to come late after school has started at 8:30. And then there's another car, there it is, another car that's coming down. Those are the parents who, would walk their child in. They come into the north parking lot and park and walk. They don't interface with the people in the south parking lot because they have come and gone in the opposite direction. So I give you this back. And finally, I think I want to say that the one thing that I have discovered in many years of working with the community is that communities always have histories. There's always a history. And histories are often not forgotten, especially the bad things that really, really bugged somebody. But how much more would it be for Hamilton to have a fine-tuning of the history that ends up with something that is positive, that ends up being something that provides something that gives back to the community, and that people who have been at the school have contributed to the community. To me, that's the legacy that we want. That's what we want to be able to provide. And I think that might be able to overturn some of the other things that may have been historic before. I also want to say that we've been approved by every other process. We've been through fire department, we've been through state licensing, and we have met every single requirement plus some that has been indicated and required by any licensing process. And we hope that that you'll also say yes, that you will help us to be able to provide something that we think is going to really give back to Hamilton and make an impact in Novato. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you step down, commissioners, did you have any questions for the project applicant? Commissioner Wernick, did you have any follow-ups to your question? Or you
Not at this point.
okay, great. Commissioner Strauss?
Yeah, I have grandkids going through a very similar Montessori program in Oakland, and they have always gone at a set time, and they get picked up at a set time, and it's more like it's different than I think what you've described, which is people coming at different times and dropping off their kids at different times, and maybe it's a little more formal than this program is. I don't know whether all Montessori programs are the same.
It must be that they don't provide additional care, additional opportunities for care, because school does start at 8:30.
Okay. That
Parents have the ability from 7 o'clock until 8:30 to bring their children.
that explains it.
And then there are the people who
That explains it.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So at this point, I'll open it up to other public speakers. I've got a couple of speaker cards here, and while you don't need a speaker card to speak, I'm going to start with the speaker cards. I have up first Dr. Cindy Acker. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dr. Acker, I truly apologize, yeah. And then we have Christine Slate, or Slate. Oh, she's
there
come.
she is.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to all of this. Is this working? Nope.
Nope.
I'm sorry if I talk really loud in my teacher voice. I've been a resident of Novato for 27 years. I'm from the Sunset Ridge area. And I've been an educator for 42 years and have a doctorate in that field. I'm in favor of this Montessori school. I love the philosophy behind Montessori, even though I'm not trained in it. And I also know that there's a desperate need for these spots in Novato. I looked at St. Francis for my eldest child when I moved to preschool, and they said, yeah, great, we have a session from 9 to 12. And that didn't do me any good as a working mother, because I needed care before that and care after that. And that's what this would provide. So I'm solidly in favor of this preschool.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for hearing me.
Next up, I've got Sue Summer. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Sue Summer, and this room is very familiar to me because I taught at Novato High School for 17 years. I engendered the creative writing program at the School of the Arts 14 years ago, and I've also been a member of Unity for about 20 years. So this is all a nice blend for me. I taught honors English at Novato, and I realized what an amazing benefit it is for kids to have early education, especially in when it's excellent and it teaches the right thing the right things about how to live, not just how to read a literature book or how to diagram a sentence. Well, we don't do that anymore, but what a preposition is from a pronoun, but how to live and how to be good citizens and of the earth and in society. I'm a professional educator, and I still teach classes at Unity, writing classes. So I'm still, and there, as Cindy said, that I live in Corte Madera and in a little community where there are lots and lots of kids, and there is a dearth of programs like this, that people are always looking for something that's excellent and flexible like this, because people don't always go to work at the same time. They have different kinds of jobs. So I am a real proponent of this, and I thank you for all your consideration and for listening.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak regarding this matter? If so, please feel free to approach the podium. Welcome.
My name is Don Davey. I'm a member of this church. I would like to see a show of hands of supporters of this project in the room. I would like to see a show of hands of detractors of this project in the room. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding this item? Yes, ma'am, please. Excellent sweater, by the way. And excellent socks, yes.
I don't think I need the microphone.
Nope.
It's not working. I've been an educator in Marin County, teaching in various programs, developmentally disabled, all the way to K through 12. And I have a master's in community development and consciousness studies. But I want to speak to the value of Montessori education, because my own daughter was a Montessori student, and she is now a practicing physician in Portland with her own clinic serving up to 450 patients a month with a large staff. She recently spoke to our community. I'm a member of this church. And her quest to find things out for herself, in spite of the frustrations of my husband and myself, she always had to learn by trying things. And Montessori provides the impetus and the opportunity for children to explore on their own and to learn on their own. You're nodding your head, you know, yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It is, and I am so grateful that we have this opportunity to both use our facility and to provide this for the children of Novato, which wish we could have it for more children that would benefit from it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for further comments, questions, discussion. Commissioners?
I have a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Ward?
On a kind of a different, not having to do with the difference between a preschool and a daycare. Staff report talks about fire district having done their review and made recommendations. So the one that was, I mean, fire extinguishers are obvious, but it did make mention to automatic fire sprinklers. Is there a requirement that the building be sprinklered if it's not?
So that was a condition of approval that was made by the fire department. So before they can get their use permit, they have to meet those requirements. And so that was based upon the comments that I received. We would need to go ahead and ask Cindy. I included the comments based upon what the fire marshal sent me as a condition of approval. And based upon her saying that they had been signed off. I haven't received anything from the fire marshal saying that they have, but what happens is we will reach out to them if it's approved to make sure that everything is in compliance. So let's go ahead and ask the applicant.
Yeah, can we, Cindy, are you able to go to the podium and answer? Sure. Thank you. And
I requested a pre-inspection. And so the conditions of approval are the things that the fire marshal is going to look for in order to come out. We had more than what was needed, which was really incredible. Unity has this Cadillac fire system, and so there were, I mean, it had bells and whistles that you would not imagine, and that weren't even on her document. So, so we passed the fire inspection and passed it. That was the first thing that did pass. And in order to be licensed by the state of California, and the state of California has provided us with the fact that they will provide a license if we get a go-ahead here. It's required that the fire inspection is the very first thing. Before they even will come out, you must have fire clearance, or the state doesn't bother coming out.
so my specific question is the building sprinklered?
Yeah.
It is sprinklered. Okay, that's what I wanted to just,
Yes.
okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Tiernan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Comments, or?
No. Well, I think it's fabulous. I think, though, the members of the congregation should acknowledge that there are other residents out there that have a slightly different point of view about the play structure, and I would hope that there's a way of meeting of the minds. You know, I mean, the landscaping is hopefully going to make a difference. And there's a number of play structures, as I wandered through Hamilton Field, that are of similar use. They just don't happen to have bright yellow, pyramids on top of them. So I think this is a fabulous program. I'm going to, support it, but I would, just urge the members of the congregation to, go that next step to resolve some of that conflict that appears to still be brewing.
And Commissioner Strauss, earlier you had waved your hand.
Yeah, I want to brag about my grandkids. This program, if well run, and I'm assuming it would be, is a treasure for this community. I mean, but I've got a 7-year-old grandson who can read Harry Potter in Spanish, who can paint and has been taught perspective and color, and who can sing in a choir. Now, he's an extraordinary kid, but as far as I can tell, that's the way that program is structured and run, and it's a marvel. And they have my granddaughter has they both have fabulous social skills, and they were all completely safe and cared for, and truly loved this place. I periodically babysit for them, and I go over to Oakland and I pick them up, and you can't get those kids out of there very easily. I'll tell you that. You need to. It's got good security. It's in a church like this, and it's just fabulous, just really fabulous. This would be a wonderful, wonderful addition to Hamilton. It'll increase everybody's property values out there to have a Montessori school there. I guarantee it.
Any other commissioners care to comment, discuss?
I guess I have a question. The 52, the number 52, did that come up from the applicant, or was it staff that we directed that because of traffic, or was there a reason were we limiting them? I guess is my question.
So initially, they had proposed 90 plus, and when I had it, which had also triggered some concerns in the community, and when I had a conversation with the applicant as to why, where that number was generated, she said that they were putting that number down on the application for the state. And the reason for that is the state actually looks at this total square footage of the facility, and based upon the square footage of the facility, they license them for that amount of students. And the reason for that, if there is a room at the Unity in Marin that is not licensed, you cannot put that, if say one room flooded and this other room wasn't licensed, you could not put the children from this other room into this other room without having that license. So what they were doing is licensing the whole facility, even though they never were going to exceed the 52. And so in order to compromise with some of the concerns of the neighborhood, we discussed potentially conditioning the project so that it wouldn't exceed a certain amount, and they were fine with that. And so that's where we went from 90 to 52. State will still say 90, because that way they have some flexibility as to the different rooms they can do that still meets the requirements of the state. So they can use a sanctuary and they can use a classroom. And so they have some flexibility. Without being licensed for the state for that large number, they cannot do that. They can actually get a violation and get shut down. So that's why they take precautionary measures from the beginning to be licensed for more, even though the project is conditioned that they cannot exceed more than 52 students at one time.
Whoa, okay. All right, that's a shame. It would be nice. I'm one of those people whose 3-year-old didn't make the list in time, and so now I have to schlep down to San Rafael every day. Yeah. So yes, I'm excited to see more schools come into town. So I'm a little bummed that we're that maybe because some neighbors came out and said they don't want to see a bunch of children there, that we limited it. But anyhow.
I think just to clarify, so the initial application was for 90 to satisfy a state requirement. In talking to the applicant, they voluntarily reduced it to 52. Staff did not identify a hardline number to reduce to.
Oh, I get that. I know a lot of applicants get scared and when neighbors come out and say they don't want to see a huge number like that, so.
No, I should say that this is a use permit process, and if in the future the applicant would like to expand enrollment, they could come back to conceivably the planning commissioner or zoning administrator level to amend the use permit to a higher number. And perhaps this is an opportunity for the community out in Hamilton to become more comfortable with the operation without having such a high student volume up in the 90 range. So this does not foreclose the opportunity for expansion in the future.
Nice, Steve. All right. Thank you.
And the use permit, it has a 2-year, it's a 2-year use permit. Am I correct? Is that what I read?
No, the use permit has an expiration period of 2 years. So if the use were not established, this use permit would expire.
Okay, got it.
Otherwise, the permit runs with the land, and if it's not this operator, another could take it over and continue.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, well, at this point, I'm wondering if we're ready for a motion on this item, or if anybody would like to mention any.
I would move approval.
Seconded.
Very well. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion of the item before
If I may just make one suggested amendment to the resolution this evening, we want to make sure that the approval recognizes the application document submitted by the applicant as well as the operational manual that was accompanying it. So those are the two controlling documents for the actual use, and they should be appended to the approval this evening.
Could we refer to those? Would those be referred to as like Exhibit A and B, or?
No, I think just simply I have a simple statement here to add in as a condition. It says the operator shall operate preschool in compliance with the application statement and parent handbook dated 2017, 2018, here, incorporated herein by reference.
That's fine. Accept that as amendment to the motion.
Okay. Very well. We'll start the roll call. Commissioner.
So
Sorry?
the applicant had just indicated that the handbook is actually partially dictated by what the state requires, so that could potentially change.
Okay.
With state standards.
With, yeah.
I think that the only thing that staff was concerned with were the operational types of requirements, like the parking circulation and those issues. So I think we could say the operational requirements of the handbook as a way to sort of narrow that down and stay out of things like student-teacher ratios and things that you don't particularly necessarily care about.
And in all events, consistent with state law.
Yeah, and there's another good phrase we can add to that condition.
All right. Any further discussion on the matter? Very well. I'll take a vote. Commissioner Turner?
Aye.
Commissioner Warnick?
Aye.
Commissioner Derby?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Yes.
Commissioner Gabriel?
Aye.
And I as well. So the motion passes 6-0.
Chair Hovel.
Yes.
Could you please tell me who the second was?
Oh, I was the
That was
second.
Commissioner Derby.
Thank you.
Can I add some comments? So I just want to let the audience know, our role as planning commissioners in here tonight, we were looking at a use permit. So, I mean, the use is what we're looking at also, but we're also looking at the impact on the neighborhood. So to just kind of let you know why I asked questions like I did, because the impact does make a difference to the neighbors and people that live there. So I think it's appropriate often to, to ask some really tough questions. And I will say, I mean, preschool is absolutely critical. My children were very fortunate to go to preschool. My boys are in their 20s, they've done well. And I'm proud to say that one of my St. Francis grads is a West Point grad. So clearly, preschool matters.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Okay, so closing out our agenda this evening, we have any general upcoming agendas or any other directors' news?
So this is the last meeting of 2017, and then as we head into 2018, the meetings in January actually fall on holidays, so the commission will have a break over January, and we will pick up back in February, presumably with perhaps the Bahia Heights project and possibly the Hannah Ranch project. So we have some larger projects headed this way.
Okay. Was there anything else?
Nothing further.
All right. With that, I will adjourn tonight's meeting. Good night.
There we go. You didn't use that the whole night.